Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome in. Just going to give it a couple minutes while everyone gets logged in, and then we will get started. If you are just now logging in, if you want to say hello and just drop in the chat where you're tuning in from, that's always fun to see where everyone is in the world. Welcome. If you're just joining us, I'm just giving it a moment for everyone to get logged in, and feel free to say hi and drop your location in the chat if you'd like. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, the Berkshires. Amazing. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Washington, Vancouver, BC. Okay, a few more from our area. New York City, hi. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are here to celebrate Sheet Pan Sweets by Molly Gilbert. Very excited to chat about that today. We also have Gesine Bullock-Prado here to chat with us as well. So very excited for a wonderful, cozy conversation about baking and desserts and all of that good stuff. Let me introduce myself. I'm Zoe Friesen. I'm the events manager here at Booklarder. We are a community cookbook store located in Seattle, Washington. We do 100% cookbooks and food writing. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let's see, just a few notes before we get started. The talk will be recorded and posted up on our YouTube channel within a couple of days. So if you have to jump off, you can catch the end or rewatch it or send it to a friend. And since you RSVP'd, you will get an email with the link to the replay as well. Okay, let's see what else. So they will leave time, Molly and Gesine will leave time for questions towards the end. So make sure you put all of your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. That way we can make sure we get those questions to them. And yeah, feel free to think of all your best baking and dessert questions throughout the talk, and we will get to those right at the end. Let's see, I think that's about all for me. Oh, of course, you can support the talk by purchasing a copy of Sheet Pan Sweets from Booklarder, and I will drop the link into the chat there for you. And thank you so much to everyone that's done that already. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Molly and Gesine.
Hi.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
It is so beautiful and joyful, this book. I mean, it's hard to put it down because I want to make everything and eat everything. But I think, of course, I think the first question anybody would ask you is, what is your favorite gauge of sheet pan?
My favorite brand of sheet pan?
Or gauge. No, do you like it like the really heavy duty? Or do you like the lighter aluminum?
It's interesting, you know, for my first book, Sheet Pan Suppers, which came out almost 10 years ago now.
I know.
I really like just like the no frills, you know, aluminum sheet pan. I have probably 4 or so that are all almost black at this point. They've just gotten like worked to the bone. And then for this one, I treated myself and I bought a couple of the like kind of nicer nonstick ones. And they're, you know, I sort of like would turn my nose up at them before. I was like, you know, you don't need that. It's like, you know, you don't need to spend $40 on a sheet pan. But it's pretty nice to have, especially for a lot of the like baking, you know, the cakes and the rolled cakes and just having that nonstick coating. So right now, those are kind of in the top of my rotation, I would say.
Isn't that funny? It's like when you're like, no, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, okay, never mind. I really like it. Yeah. But do you always use a parchment with, or are there some things that you will actually forego any kind of lining in a sheet pan? Because when do you forego?
You know, it depends on the recipe, but especially if I'm using like the nonstick kind, if I'm doing a sheet cake, often I'll serve it right out of the tray, and it's easier and kind of nicer to not be cutting into the parchment on the paper. I mean, on the pan. So for a lot of the sheet cakes, I'll just, you know, rub with butter or spray it with nonstick spray or something, and that works really great. I don't have any trouble with turning out. But for the like more delicate kind of fussier recipes, there's a lot of rolled cakes in
Yeah,
here.
there are. And they're beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those I want to make sure they really like come out the way I want them to. So I line those heavily with the parchment
Yes.
paper to make sure that it comes out, and then I have something to like scoot it around on the
Right.
work surface with. But
Now-
yeah, it kind of just depends.
Silpat or no silpat?
I haven't used Silpats in a while. I have some, but they've just been sitting in my drawer, kind of lonely. I find that if I am going to serve off the pan, I don't want to cut a Silpat because that's a pain. But for something like cookies, if a Silpat is great. I've been so used to, I buy the pre-cut sheets of parchment, and they fit perfectly on my sheet pan. And I just grab those, and then I don't have to like clean them afterward.
Do you buy the super special pre-cut sheets? Like here at King Arthur Flour, they have the really durable kind that you can use again and again and again, or do you use a thinner like Quilon?
I just got like the thinner whatever's on Amazon, actually.
I think
But
like
I find even that,
yeah.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Even that kind I reuse, especially for like, cookies or something that doesn't get all the grease on the parchment. I'll reuse that until it's kind of extra brown and crispy, and then I'll compost.
I love it.
Yeah.
As it should be. It's kind of like how the sheet pans are. You kind of
Right.
want them to have a patina.
That's right. You got to get every last drop out.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask, because you specified what your favorite chips were. What is your favorite Dutch cocoa? Do you have a favorite?
I really like right now, is it called Drost or Drost or something?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's what I can find, and I really love the flavor of that. And I also, when I haven't been able to find that, I've just used like the Hershey's special dark Dutch cocoa, and that works great too. But if I can find it, I'll use Drost.
Drost. Yeah, that's perfect. And can I just say, I'm so glad that you specified, you didn't say German chocolate cake, you said German's chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because it's not a German cake.
That's right. It's a person named German.
Yes, you specified it. I love it. One thing, I mean, it's been 10 years since you started. There it is.
There's the Germans.
Since you started, I feel like you started this wave, and it's just kept going since your first book. And it's been kind of this, I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have the Pinterest or the Instagram, but it took hold so dynamically and just rolled and rolled and rolled. Had you always wanted to do then a dessert version of the book?
Yeah. I have a massive sweet tooth. I love to bake. It's sort of like how I show my love to everyone around me. And Sheet Pan Suppers has a dessert chapter, but it's fairly small and limited. So yes, I jumped at the opportunity to do a full dessert sheet pan book. Yeah, and I had no idea at the time that sheet pan cooking would take off the way it did, but I'm obviously so thrilled that it has. And I mean, obviously we're still talking about sheet pans today, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, and there is no lack of subject matter. I mean, this covers so many glorious things. It's like you could bake all desserts all the time only from this book. Like there's nothing that I like. It's like, oh, I wonder if there it is. I'm so happy. It was so exciting.
Yeah,
and, I mean,
you can do so much.
So black and white cookies always round, but there's something so dynamic and beautiful about them being square like that. That
was one of my favorites. And when I developed the recipe, actually, I did half of the pan vanilla and half chocolate, so it just looked like one giant black and white cookie.
That would work too.
It's kind of fun, but then you have to really prefer either vanilla or chocolate. You gotta, if you want a little of every in each bite, which is how I prefer, then doing it individually like that makes more sense.
But that would be a visual. That would be a beautiful visual. So because you have classic training, culinary training, And so many of these things are very homey, but you are a culinary professional. So they are beautiful, but they still feel very approachable. When you were in culinary school, did you find that there were some things from the home kitchen that you brought to bear during your culinary school? Like you were like, oh, like somebody in my family did it this way at home, and this would help improve this very French culinary technique.
Yeah, for me, it almost went the opposite way because I loved, going to
That
culinary
was my next question.
school. And obviously I learned a ton, but I don't know if it's just like my general demeanor. I'm a little more casual than the, like tall hat, super white coat, which is so cool, but maybe I'm just lazy. I just think that being able to kind of streamline and simplify everything is the way I enjoy baking, because I don't want it to be stressful. Like I enjoy taking my time and doing the steps and whatever, but I don't love like messying the entire kitchen or pulling out all the things. So I think I've been able to take pieces, more refined pieces of things that I've learned from, pastry school and apply them more in the home kitchen, which, I don't know that I thought about it as much while I was in school. I was sort of just like a sponge trying to absorb as much as I could.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's certainly now my sort of motto is like, let's make it sophisticated and refined, but if we can kind of simplify it as much as possible, let's do that.
What would be, because there are, so like for poke cakes and things like that, what would be something that you had brought from culinary school to what would usually be a simpler kind of homey recipe? Like what would be a technique that you think, I can't believe home bakers and home cooks don't do this or don't know about this, or they could really utilize it easily at home?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I think for me, a lot of it was about process and kind of being clean in the kitchen. I mean, everybody bakes in a different sort of way, but just like having the mise en place ready. So before I start a recipe, I fill a sheet pan with all, here's the amount of flour I need, here's the whatever. So it's sort of like this organized little area where I'm going to start. And then cleaning as I go and making sure that like my little area is nice and clean. I know some people have like different mindsets about that, but I just can't really work in like a, hurricane zone kitchen, which I definitely learned and was instilled upon us in school for sure. But things like, like I don't think I had ever really used parchment paper before culinary school, just did at home. And now I just have these sheets that I'm pulling out left and right. But yeah, I try to, I love making, there was like a whole unit on like custards and creams and stuff in pastry school. And I I love making puddings and pastries or pastry cream and all that stuff, but it is like a little bit more involved and you have to be, careful to not curdle your eggs and all the kind of more precise elements of pastry. So when I was doing this book, I'm looking at the recipe here for my kind of fancy fruit tart thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something that would like look like it could be in a patisserie somewhere, but I didn't want home cooks to have to go through like each step of making that pastry cream custards. So I like used a little cheat. I found out that if you use a tablespoon or two of like Jello pudding pastry cream, you get that exact same thing with a little bit less effort, a little bit less of going through all the things, but like nobody has to know. It's,
no one has to
delicious.
know. No one has to know.
Yeah.
Are you baking anything from the book for Thanksgiving? Because
Yes.
there are lovely pumpkin things in there. It's like, but what is your
I have been assigned, my family is very like militant about Thanksgiving and like we do the same thing every year. And normally I'm in charge of making like 4 pumpkin pies, 4 pecan pies, whatever, all this stuff, cheesecake, which I am going to do a cheesecake, but I'm going to do the pumpkin pie bars. So instead of making 4 pies, I'll just do the 1 giant pan of pie bars. And then I'll
Right.
do the pecan pie bars as well.
Mhm.
Where is that one? See if I can show. So the pumpkin pie bars, I'll probably cut them into squares because it's just a little easier, but
Yeah.
it's the same idea. It's the crust on the bottom, the pumpkin custard on top. And then I don't know if there's a picture of the pecan pie bars. I don't think so.
But I think it's just so smart because people, that's one question people always have, is that how are you going to manage like baking for all these people? And it's like, it's right, it's here, right here. You can do it
Yeah.
all there. And it, you know, it looks gorgeous, it looks neat, and it will fit on a table, you know, because there are no round edges. Like you can just have it next to each other. Perfect.
I'm really excited, honestly. Every year when my family digs in, we're vultures. We just like get in there. It's a mess. And I look at these like pies that I've taken forever to like, you know, carefully curate and craft, and like the slices are all like weird, and like, you know, it's like there's some whipped cream over here and that shouldn't be there, but like now I'm just gonna cut into bars, and like people will take the bar and go, and it's not gonna be this like
It's not a free for all.
right. Exactly.
How dare you mar my beautiful work?
I know. And it's all supposed to get eaten. That's what it's supposed to look like at the end of the night.
Yes.
Like, oh, come on, make it a slice. But yeah.
But speaking of, what is your go-to implement for especially getting out the first slice?
That's so it's hard. So what I normally do is I cut with like a little paring knife, or I'll cut if I'm just cutting one, I'll use a paring knife and just cut one little square, or I will take a bigger knife and I'll cut the whole thing into like all the bars that I want. And a trick that I learned for doing that is you take the whole pan and then you just think in halves, right? So I cut the whole pan in half, and then I cut that half in half and the other half in half, turn the pan and keep going. And that way we get even squares or rectangles or whatever you're going for. Because at first,
hard.
I know. It's truly, I mean, before I sort of figured that out, which of course it's like a no-brainer, makes sense.
But
I would just like kind of eyeball, like, okay,
yeah,
kind of that size, but then it would all be like not straight, a little wonky. But just remember halves and you'll get the even slices. But then I have this cute little spatula. It's like a metal spatula. It's probably like this big, rectangular. There's no like lines or anything, and it's just a flat piece of aluminum, and it gets right under that first slice. Highly recommend something like that. I don't know if I wrote about that in the book, actually.
That first slice is key.
It's like that first pancake, right? It's like you got to give that first slice to someone who won't really care, who you really trust.
Yeah, we need the name of whomever makes that little tool, because that sounds genius.
I think it's an Ateco tool. I'm pretty sure. I will double check.
Ateco makes amazing things.
Yes.
Amazing. Now, is there something, do you have like seasonal go-tos? So for, say, winter is coming. So once you get past Thanksgiving, what would be like your comfort, warming?
My first thing that comes to mind is my gingerbread cake. It's called Nana's Christmas Gingerbread, and it's my husband's Nana's recipe. She apparently used to make it every Christmas time, and it's like the simplest, most unassuming cake, but it's a sheet cake, one layer. It's this just like dark brown kind of sticky cake, but it's very light and airy. So oftentimes I think gingerbread's just like a little bit heavy and like claggy, they would say.
Yeah, claggy. Yeah.
On the Great British Bake Off.
Yeah.
But this one is just like, it's very, very light and lovely. And even if I've had like a giant Christmas dinner, Hanukkah meal, whatever, there's always room in my belly for a slice of it. It's just really, really light. And in the picture, it looks like it was baked in a different pan, which is kind of odd, but I was
wondering about that. Yeah.
It's just for the photo. They kept it into like a little like a tin, like a little giving tin, but it looks like a pan. I just top it with a little bit of powdered sugar, and that's all it needs. So I would recommend that for winter time. And then of course, like the cookies section, all the Christmas cookies and bars and stuff.
Yeah, and that was what I want to go to next. So what would be your like favorite gifting thing, and I went straight to the cookies, is like, of course, but like, what would be the most packageable, shippable of the cookies? Because that's one of my favorite things to do is gift treats. But for you, like, you're like, this is both tasty and you can package it, no problem.
I'd probably go, this is another Nana recipe, but I would go to the Kiflings.
Yeah.
Which are these. They're really pretty and they're very like, seasonal, I would say. But they're these little almond cookies and they last forever. You roll them in powdered sugar when they come out of the oven hot. So they get that like kind of crust of powdered sugar and then an extra powdered sugar after they cool. But they last a really long time. So they'll be great to ship and they're not too precious and delicate. But I would put together like a nice little Christmas cookie box. I always do these molasses sparkle cookies.
Molasses cookies are the best.
My neighbors always ask like every year because I've been making them for years and giving them to the neighbors and they kind of feel like, okay, like when are those molasses
When are they
cookies
coming?
Right, that's like the season begins once those molasses cookies come out. But yeah, those two I would say are winners for holiday gifting.
And I also really loved the idea of, I have never loved white chocolate, but I only started loving it when combining it with like cranberries and nuts. And it's the traditional cranberry macadamia kind of combo. But your combination of white chocolate and ginger, I'm like, oh, that is a great foil for that super, super sweet white chocolate. I thought that was such a brilliant combination.
Thank you. That's a good one. I probably should have flagged that one too. And that one has a bunch of flaky sea salt on top. So it's like a double kind of
the best.
I agree though with white chocolate. It has never been my favorite, but I've warmed up to it once you pair it with the right thing.
So what is I noticed you use matcha and there's sesame, like what is a very like au courant ingredient that you're like, oh, I wish it was around when I was developing this book? Or like, is there something that you're like, oh, I wish I had been playing with that at the time of writing this book?
I feel like there's tons of things all the time that I'm always like, ooh, that would have been really good or interesting on a sheet pan. Or I mean, you mentioned, this isn't like a trend or anything, but you mentioned cheesecake. Or maybe I mentioned cheesecake.
You did. You're going to make a cheesecake.
I'm going to make a cheesecake at Thanksgiving.
I see your calendar of bakes in front of me.
I do wish that I had like a sheet pan cheesecake on here. Now I'm like double checking my book to make sure that there's not one in here. And I'm not just like.
Well, there are some that are cheesecake-ish.
Yeah, so I have this like cheesecake swirl brownie, whatever. But I would have loved to try like a real kind of classic cheesecake,
like a junior's style.
Yeah,
that is book 3, but book 2 of the desserts.
Sorry, say that one more. I missed that.
That will be your third book. It will be.
That's right. It'll be a cheesecake.
All cheesecake all the time. And but the other thing, speaking of gifting, that made me really happy is that you have granola in here, which I think is like the oldest school sheet pan bake.
Oh yeah.
Because that was like every hippie mama made granola in a sheet pan. And they, like my mom did, like she didn't do anything fun like cakes, but she would always make our unsweet granola, which is such a bummer. But this looks so amazing. I'm like, it reminded me of my mom, and I'm like, I wish my mom made this one. Looks so good.
That's a good one for gifting. It's a pumpkin spice granola, but it's not like slappy in the face pumpkin spice. So a little more subtle, which I like. But yeah, I agree. My kind of crunchy aunt was the one who taught me how to make granola on a sheet pan.
There's always one.
Yep, that's right.
There's always one. Now, what your family, does each person have a different favorite from here, or does everybody kind of glom onto the same?
Each person has a different favorite, and it's kind of funny because so I'm married. My husband has a recipe in here. It's called Ben's carrot zucchini cake. He's a big
I saw
cake
that.
fan.
Healthy eater.
Yeah, that's right. He is he likes desserts, but I like love desserts. So my whole family thinks like he's like the super healthy kind of one. I'm like, he's not actually, but you know, he just likes his veggies.
Comparatively.
Right. And then the cover recipe, I named after my middle son, Jack. Jack's chocolate chip cake with fudge frosting, because that was what he asked for his 3rd birthday, and it sort of turned into his favorite cake. So then my oldest son, Calder, when the book came out, was like, Mom, why didn't I get a recipe? I'm like, because you didn't tell me what your favorite was, but next time I promise you'll get something. But yeah, everybody sort of does have their own favorite. Calder loves the pumpkin pie bars and is so excited for Thanksgiving to like eat half the sheet tray of pumpkin pie bars. So that's his favorite.
And it's kind of healthy.
Yeah, that's right. Apparently they all like vegetables in their desserts. Yeah, but it is nice that there's so much variety and different, you know, whether it's cakes or bars or cookies or pie, you know, it's a little something for everyone.
Now, is there anything that from your kind of culinary higher end pastry background that you love to do that is just too fancy for your kids?
That I love to do.
That you love, but they're like, I'd rather have
so much that I make. I'm like always like, this is gonna be, you're gonna love this so much, and they're just like, no. I made like this beautiful lasagna last night with like all, you know, spinach and all this different stuff, and they were just like, no thanks. Like, okay, one day you're gonna appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, I love like French pastry and, you know, all the like, I mean, you and your classes that you teach like croissants and all sorts of like the laminated dough. That's not something that I have time really to do right now with the ages of my 3 kids. But I would love to do more of that in the future. And I do think that as they get older, they may start to appreciate stuff like that a little bit.
I mean, how can you not appreciate like slabs of butter in between dough? I mean,
right? Yeah, agreed. I think we're in agreement there for sure.
Now, for you, what are your favorite flavor combinations?
My all-time favorite flavor combo is chocolate peanut butter. I feel like it can't get better than that. So I've got the Buckeye bars in here, which is some of my favorites. They're so super rich. So if you make them, you're going to want to cut them really small.
Those are gorgeous, luscious, and insane.
But I do like kind of slip the chocolate peanut butter combo in there in a lot of different places. Like I just made the other day these patchwork cookie bars, which is a recipe. You just make one dough and then you flavor it 3 different ways. And this one calls for like a double chocolate, one that's an oatmeal cranberry, and then a chocolate chip coconut. But I made it the other day, and instead of the double chocolate, I did chocolate dough with like peanuts and peanut butter chips. So wherever I can kind of slide in a little chocolate peanut butter, I'll do that.
Well, and speaking of those combinations, the Neapolitan is gorgeous. Just the picture is so beautiful. And I love it because you can eat it all together, or you can just pick your favorite lane. And how you use freeze-dried fruits it's just so smart, but it's also flavorful and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love freeze-dried fruits for baking. I feel like that's been a sort of popular thing I've seen lately in the last couple of years, but it makes perfect sense because you get all that concentrated fruit flavor without any of the moisture that'll kind of
without messing up the ratios in there.
Yeah.
And I also, one of my favorite is just I want in my mouth now. It's the matcha crinkles.
The matcha crinkles. Yes, those are a real acquired taste. My husband he loves green tea, but he was not at all into the matcha crinkle cookie. And I'm sort of the opposite. I go usually for coffee over like a matcha drink, but I loved the matcha crinkle cookies. I felt like I wanted to work matcha in there somehow. It did seem sort of like of the moment flavor combination.
But it's so tasty.
Yeah.
Well, and like the tahini brownie cookies, it's like, I feel like that's something that's having a moment or had a moment, but with chocolate, it is so good.
And that's another way that I sort of snuck my like chocolate peanut butter preference in there, because it's just a little different variation of the chocolate peanut butter theme. And some people who can't have peanut butter
can
Right.
enjoy tahini.
Right. Yeah.
Now, speaking of allergies, so did you find it difficult to, because you have the flourless peanut butter Oaties, peanut butter again, did you find it tough to kind of develop recipes that were gluten-free or were allergy conscious, or was it just kind of, did it come naturally just to
Well,
what
it's
you
really funny. It's hilarious that you asked that actually, because like midway through writing this book, actually once like most of the testing was done, I discovered that gluten and I aren't quite on the same page these days. I need to kind of, I know, I know. And now I'm like, here's all my gluten.
Tragic.
Well, I know. But a lot of the recipes in here just happen to be gluten-free. There's a lot of the individual meringues, there's a meringue cake, there's the flourless. Those cookies, my kitchen sink cookies happen to be gluten-free, and that was just because I ran out of stuff in my pantry and I had to just, I like grabbed the almond flour and the oat flour and they came out really good. But yeah, I'm really happy to have a bunch of gluten-free stuff in here, especially as someone who really needs to cut back on the gluten these days, ironically.
My sympathies. That's
Thank you. I'm hoping it'll pass, but we'll see.
It may, but on the other hand, if anybody can work beautiful things gluten-free into your life, it's you.
Yeah, that might be my next act is more gluten-free desserts. We will see.
But it is, I think, with your pastry background, because if you have studied pastry, French and Austrian, all those things, there are so many things that are just naturally gluten-free, where you're not trying to shove this, the gluten-free flour into something and change something that really shouldn't be gluten-free. So your background is perfect for this.
I hope so. Yeah, we will see. But it is, yeah, you're right, like a lot of nuts and like egg foams and chocolate, which is all good.
Yeah, chocolate and cocoa. And then I love that there is such a wonderful mix of like homey and like painfully elegant things, like the cherry almond clafouti, which is just, I can imagine on a half sheet pan, nothing more beautiful than that studded, beautiful cake.
Yeah, that one was it was like kind of a quiet favorite of mine. It doesn't like scream, make me eat me right now, but you should, because it's like, it's so good. And it's very just elegant and kind of impressive. It's like you look at the picture,
it is.
Like, oh, that's just it's a bar of something and it's cute and nice, but it's really stunning when you bite into it. And I like to use, it's easy to find frozen cherries.
Yes.
Use a mix of the sour and the sweet, and it's just it's really good.
But I think where books like this could have been like, just, it's a bars book. This is not a bars book. This is like a beautiful dessert book that just happens to be made in sheet pans, which I think is like a testament to your great talent and your ability to make things both tasty and beautiful, in that in someone else's hand, it could just be a bunch of squares. And this instead is something entirely more and beautiful in that.
Thank you for saying that. That's what I was going for, honestly.
Yeah, they're elevated desserts, no matter whether they're sheet panny or not. But there are also things that I can find. Well, I want to eat everything in there, but I know I can find something for anyone in my life in here.
Thank you.
And they would be both impressed and just really happy that they got to eat it.
I feel like that's the highest compliment. That's what I'm going for. Just like honestly, truly something for everyone, making people happy with desserts.
Yeah. Now, is there another book on the horizon, or are you just going to sit back and enjoy having done this one?
Yes, I would love to do another book, but there's nothing on the horizon yet. Like I said, I right now have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 5 months. So my 5-month-old came like right before the book came out, and it's been just like this whirlwind of like human baby, book baby, everything at once. So I'm gonna take a minute and just kind of see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I'll always keep lists of like recipes that I want to make, or things I want to kind of explore more. So we will see.
Now, is your human baby showing any signs of food preferences? Like is there anything in here you're like, oh, she would love this?
She hasn't started eating real food yet, but just like this week, she started, like, her head, just every time I'm eating or someone is eating, she's just like so focused and fascinated. And I'm so excited to finally give her some food, because I think she's gonna go nuts.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And so I know your boys have their preferences, but are they in any way picky eaters in ways that you're like, you were testing recipes and they were just not like, they would either not eat it, or you knew you were like, it would be wasted on them?
Yeah, totally. And my middle one, Jack, he's 4 and he's very opinionated. He's sort of classic middle kid. And just like has these opinions and sticks with these opinions. And he just like doesn't like fruit, which is the weirdest thing for a kid to just like not like any fruit. But so, I'd make like a big sheet pan of pancakes or something. And I know for him, like, he's only going to want the chocolate chips. That's it. But, I would at least try, when I develop them, all different ones. I'm like, it's a beautiful pancake full of like strawberries. It's so sweet. It's like candy. And he's like, nope, don't want to touch it. The fruit can't be touched.
All the best things.
I know. So everything like that. I have like the blueberry muffin, like coffee cake. He won't touch that.
This is like anything with a crumble on top.
Oh yeah.
And I'm all over that.
Mm-hmm.
And the Betty is in there.
Oh,
no, the apple pan dowdy. Is that what I'm
dowdy? Yep. That one.
That, I mean,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of great that he doesn't like fruit, because then it's more for everyone else.
It's true. A full sheet pan full for everyone else.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's that whole fruit section that he's just nope.
Mm-hmm. But then who is your best tester? Who is someone that will both appreciate everything you're doing, but also give you really good and honest opinions?
Well, even though he didn't get a recipe in the book, I will probably say my son Calder he'll at least taste everything once.
Yeah.
So whether he's like skeptical about a lot of things and doesn't go for a lot of things, but he'll try everything once and he will tell me exactly how he feels about it. I feel like my husband is like the worst, because he'll taste everything and everything. He's like, oh, that's great. That's one.
Like, you're like, not helpful.
I mean, I appreciate it, but also, come on, I need some more
feedback.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, all of these recipes obviously make a ton of dessert. So it went far beyond my family. And I like loaded up my kids' teachers with stuff, all
I was
the
gonna ask,
stuff.
where did so school, neighbors is like, how did you dispense?
I got these like giant Tupperwares, and I would just, when I would send my son to school every morning, I'd be like, I'm sorry, and also you're welcome. Here's another giant Tupperware full of random sugary stuff.
And would you get feedback from that, or would you just get thank yous?
I got some feedback. I did. It was just thank yous. But I definitely got some good, because I asked, I said, I want to know, like, tell me what you guys think. And I did get some good feedback from the teachers as well.
And are you always on the hook to make things for like class events and like bake sales, all those things? Are you like the first person that's on that phone tree?
Yeah.
You're the one.
Yes, absolutely. I've firmly planted myself in that role, and I'm okay with it.
And because it's the holidays coming up and people are going to be crazy busy, what of these, and maybe all of them, is the most bake ahead and freezable that's going to come out like smelling like roses when it's out of the freezer?
Well, so any of the cookies you can go ahead and freeze, like scoop the dough into balls, freeze the balls, and then just bake those from frozen. I do that all the time, especially around the holidays when I'm putting together all sorts of like cookie tins and stuff. So I would definitely say all those cookies can do that. What else? A lot of the bars can be frozen either. Well, I would bake them, cut them, and then freeze them that way, and they'll thaw just great. things that can be frozen pre-bake. That's a really good question. I haven't tried doing it to something like, I mean, I want to say a lot of the pies could probably be done because, non-sheet pan pies you can do that with. But I haven't tried it myself. So I'm a little nervous to say, like, point specifically to certain ones. The scones that I have in the breakfast section, the currant cream scones, these are really delightful and nice if you're having like people stay with you for the holidays and stuff. You can make these and freeze them pre-bake, and then again stick them on the sheet pan, pop them in the oven. Your house will smell great, and they'll be a nice little treat.
And you'll be a hero. One of these recipes that it's one of the first I looked at, I just like my mouth started watering. The butter mochi squares.
Oh, I love those.
Anything that looks like this, it's those unassuming, buttery, like textured things that is just, I am a sucker for it. And these just look glorious.
I mean, talk about another just naturally gluten-free recipe.
Yeah, exactly. And the textural variety, right? So that's the other thing that I love about this is that there's so much texture represented in here that you get the soft, you get the crispy, you get the little chewy. I mean, I feel like it's so thoughtful as far as not only flavor combinations, but textural combinations. Yes. And just allowing people to like really experience all the beauty of baking, but just in such a beauty, like that, it's just genius. You invented it, and it's just never.
I can't take credit for inventing it, but thank you.
I'm gonna say you invented it.
Thanks, Gesine. Yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, I think about that sort of thing, like the textures and the flavors, and making sure that I've got a mix of all of the above in a book, because that's, you want to make sure you cover all the bases, and again, give a little something for everyone.
Well, but I also think it's possible that it's because like you love chocolate and peanut butter, that when you have when you lean towards something, you kind of unintentionally just kind of reinvent the wheel again and again and again. And you haven't done that at all. It's like you clearly, you have like covered all your bases, but all of it is thoughtful and beautifully done. Like none of it is like, oh, I really should do one of these. It's just, I feel like every one of them, it was done with love and is guaranteed, has like a guarantee of deliciousness to it.
Thank you. I hope that that's true.
Well, yes, it is. Now, I know this is going to be controversial and it's going to offend the sheet pan, but what is the next, what is the next most used baking pan?
Vessel. I would say the next most used baking pan is probably just like a classic brownie pan, like an 8x8 square, which is funny. I guess I like corners a lot.
I'm with you. I like things with definition, like
yeah. Maybe it's the pastry chefiness in us, where we're like, we like those lines clean. Yeah, I use that a lot, especially if I'm not, baking for a crowd and wanting to like churn out the volume. I use those. I like them for little cakes. I like them for bars and brownie. I make a lot of brownies, again, with the chocolate. But yeah, I pull that out a lot. I used it to make my lasagna the other night that everyone rejected, but
how dare they?
That I enjoyed.
That's the next book, brownie pan. Now, do you eschew round things entirely, or are there round pans in your life?
I have plenty of round pans. I do. And yeah, I guess I use my round pans. I made actually for Jack's second birthday, I made him a cake in the shape of Daniel Tiger, which is like a kid's little animated guy, and I used the round pan for that and made the little ears. And I do have round pans. But I have more sheet pans. Yeah.
I'm not being ignored, but they asked, they just.
If we're ready to dive into some questions, we've got a bunch that I would love to run by you all. So Cynthia asks, I'm not a well-experienced baker, but going to attempt the pumpkin tiramisu roll for Thanksgiving. I don't have a stand mixer, only a hand mixer. How important is the stand mixer in general to baking, and any additional hints for that particular recipe?
Great question. It is, having a stand mixer is not imperative to a lot of the recipes in this book, but I will say that something like the pumpkin tiramisu roll relies on the like quick whip of the stand mixer to get all that air in the batter, which is going to help your cake rise and make a successful roll. That would be, if you're not kind of willing to put in a ton of just muscle arm working out. I don't know that I would do that one without the mixer, but there are a ton of other cake recipes in here that just require a bowl and a whisk. I might start with one of those instead.
Do you think the hand mixer would be okay for that?
Yes, a hand mixer would definitely work for that.
Great.
Sorry, yeah, if you only have that instead of a stand mixer, that's fine. Go for it.
Okay, great. Let's see. Andrea asks, what's your preferred brand of flour?
I love King Arthur flour. That red bag I use all the time. If I can't find it, then, which I can usually out here, but if I can't find it, then I use is it Gold's? Is that the name of that flour? It's been a while because I've been using King Arthur for so long, but yes, I love King Arthur flour.
How about you, Gesine? What's your favorite flour?
King Arthur.
Yeah, nice.
And I teach at King Arthur too. So.
You're
there you go. Yeah.
to say King Arthur.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm both required, but I honestly do. And they're literally 15 minutes away from me. So
love that. Oh, very cool.
Amazing.
Here's a great question. Can you make multi-layered cakes? Tell me about your rolled cake. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the layered cakes, which I thought was so amazing to see in a sheet pan book, and then also the rolled cake.
Yes, I've got a whole chapter that's layered and rolled cakes. So to make a layered cake on a sheet pan, what you do is you bake one cake on the pan, one layer, and then you cut out either circles or, rectangles or squares, whatever shape you're going for, from that one giant cake, and stack them on top of each other with the frosting to make your layer cake, which is, I think, really nice and convenient because you don't have to be rotating all the different pans in the oven. Everything is cooking on one level and sort of, the same, you're going to get like a nice flat cake to work with. And yeah, you can turn out some nice layer cakes that way. And then the rolled cakes, it's the same thing. You're cooking one cake on the pan, and then I give instructions on how to turn out the cake while it's hot and roll it up in a dish towel, and that gives the cake the muscle memory it needs to not crack when you're then filling it and re-rolling it back up with the filling.
Wow,
that's the rolled cake.
Ooh, so impressive.
Yeah,
that would be a scary one for me in terms of just being afraid of it cracking, but
yeah, I mean, it's a little intimidating at first if it's something you've never done before. But I try to break it down and keep it as simple as possible. And I think the scariest part for me was it's like, okay, this is a hot cake and I've got to work with this cake while it's hot. But if you just, don't show the cake your fear and you go for it, it's gonna be okay.
I love that you've brought the sheet pan cakes into the three-dimensional space with both of those.
Yeah.
It's also a very pastry chefy thing to do. I think a lot of home bakers don't realize that pastry chefs get most of their round cakes from a flat sheet pan, and they have cake rings and they stamp them out. That is the way it's done. So this is kind of that. I think Molly's done such an amazing, like, presenting it to you not in that intimidating way. It's like, instead of saying this is how pastry chefs do it, it's like, look how easy, and it is so easy. But like, and then guess what? Pastry chefs do.
No, I would have had no idea. I love that. That's so smart. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Someone asks, tell us about the narrative writing part of your book. Do you enjoy that part of the process?
That is, I think, my favorite part because, I love developing the recipes and making sure that, like, everything is good in that part of the book. But it's a lot more work almost in a way. I mean, it's like you're on your feet all day. You're dealing with making sure you've got all your right ingredients and making sure you're writing everything down like to the exact thing. And when I get to just like sit and write the head notes and write the intro, stuff, that's like the relaxing and fun part to me.
Yeah, I mean, recipe development is like a totally different job from writing in a way. So it's really amazing to see them both come together like that. I love that. Jess asks, do you have any suggestions for a perfect pairing between any of these sweet bakes with an entree from Sheet Pan Suppers?
Ooh, great question. Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong when you're choosing from Sheet Pan Suppers or from it's just totally depends on your personal preference. If I were going to choose today what I would serve, I would probably, one of my favorite recipes from Sheet Pan Suppers is, there's no picture of it, so I feel like it probably doesn't get made that much, but it's this eggplant and sausage pasta. Is it pasta bake? See if I can find it.
I'm taking notes
somewhere.
here.
I can't find it obviously when I need it, but it's one of my favorites. And I love eggplant, and it's sort of an unassuming way to kind of stick eggplant in there for people who like maybe aren't so familiar with it, or just aren't sure their feelings about it. It's just like a nice, comforting, homey kind of wintry dish that I would make right now. And then I would pair it with something from Sheet Pan Sweets. I would pair it with right now probably this. Well, it's not really in season, but this plum pistachio galette.
Ooh, lovely Italian meal.
Yeah, it's very elegant, and you could substitute pears if you couldn't find plums that look good right now. And that's probably what I would go with.
I love that. Fantastic. Okay, we've talked about a lot of recipes from the book, and it's making me very excited to bake. But do you have a favorite? I know that's always such a hard question, or if not a favorite, just, if not your all-time favorite, a favorite, or one that's maybe a first one to make from the book.
Great question. It is so hard to choose a favorite. I do love the cover recipe, this Jack's chocolate chip cake. It's so fun and it's so festive, and the frosting is like addicting to me. I could just eat it straight from the bowl, and it comes together so quickly in a food processor. Although if you don't have one, you could just use a regular mixer. But I love that one. That would probably be one of my favorites. And then I also really love the berry shortbread crumble bars. Again, if you don't, fresh berries aren't in the cards right now, you could use frozen and they would turn out delicious. But those are some of my favorites as well.
I love that. And how about you, Gesine? You've done such an amazing job highlighting so many different recipes, but I'm curious if there's one in particular that stands out that maybe you have your eye on to make, or
well, the mochi bars for the just butter textural forwardness of it. The matcha crinkles. I mean, I've gone very Japanese right now, but those are like must make immediately. But also that shortbread with the berries, because it's just anything with a combination of the richness of that butter and the texture of the shortbread, along with you get the tart and sweet. I just love those kinds of combinations so much.
Absolutely. Those all sound amazing. And I will just add on a personal note that I recently made the all cereal treats, which were absolutely delicious too. So another recommendation. Let's see. Emily asks, what is Molly's favorite place to source serveware and tabletop items?
Great question. I love Anthropologie for that. I mean, they have like the most beautiful stuff. But I find stuff all over, honestly. It's I don't know, Food 52 is another really great resource for all of that stuff. They sell gorgeous things. Yeah, just depending on my budget. But yes, Food 52 and Anthropologie are up there.
Fantastic. One last question is, Andrea asks, did you enjoy being a private chef?
I did that for a summer years ago in Bridgehampton, New York, and it was really interesting experience. It wasn't my favorite job. It was just, I mean, it's a lot of pressure, and I was really young, and I wasn't, you know, exactly as seasoned as I am now. And again, I'm a little bit more on the like relaxed, laid back, home cooked kind of vibe. And you know, you just have to make sure that that vibes with the family that you're working for. And they were, you know, nice people. It was an interesting job, but it just ultimately wasn't for me. I wanted to do my own.
Yeah.
I like sitting in my computer and just typing my story. More my speed.
Wonderful. Amazing. Well, that is all of our questions. Gesine, did you have any last questions or last thoughts from anyone?
Well, I just think this is so exciting, and there's an infinite variety of choice in this book, and you can't go wrong. And just like, you can pick it up any day, and then there's something in there that you'll want to bake, and you'll be able to bake right away.
I want to hear more about Gesine's book coming out in the spring.
Give us a little hint.
Give us a sneak peek.
The sneak peek is, it's called My Vermont Table, and each chapter kind of highlights a season in Vermont, and we have 6 seasons. So it goes through our lovely traditions here in Vermont, a lot of maple and a lot of maple, but not all maple. But also, it's also, I am very much like Molly in that I love the narrative side of it, and telling stories of just living in Vermont and why it speaks to me. We live in an ancient home and what that's like, and all of the animals that we raise. And it's just kind of a little slice of our Vermont life and the beautiful food that makes us happy.
We're very much looking forward to that. I was just looking in the chat, and there's one more question I'm going to sneak in. We kind of talked about this, but let's see if we can give some encouragement. This person asks, can a novice baker like me handle things like rolled cakes? What do you think, Molly?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's sort of the point of this, is like, you don't have to be professional. You don't have to really even know what you're doing in the kitchen. I'm hopefully going to break it down and explain everything, and get you there. So yes.
Love that. Fantastic. Well, Molly, congratulations. It's really a fantastic book. So creative, so innovative, and just ultimately so delicious. Congratulations. And thank you so much for being here with us, to both of you, to Molly and Gesine.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in as well. And we are very excited to be baking from sheet pan sweets through the holidays and well beyond as well. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.